I opened my eyes, not to the sterile white of a hospital room, but to the faded, yellowed ceiling of my tiny apartment. I, Ethan Miller, 35 years old, had slaved for 10 years under Victoria Stone, the Ice Queen CEO, only to drop dead right outside her office door. The irony? The last thing I heard before I flatlined was her telling her assistant, "Get him out of here. Don't let him delay the meeting." Now I was back, 10 years younger, 25, and it was the day after she'd fired me. Perfect. This time around, I had one goal: to just chill. No more rat race. No more grinding away. Just a dog, some sunshine, and a long, easy life. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. An unknown number. I answered. "Hello, Mr. Miller? This is Victoria Stone's assistant. Ms. Stone would like to see you." I hung up, blocked the number. All in one smooth motion. She wanted to see me? Maybe in another life. Wait, this was my other life. "Ethan, you got fired." My sister, Sarah, called, her voice thick with tears like a death knell. I yawned, rubbing my ear. "Yeah, but what are we going to do? Mom still needs $500,000 for her surgery." "I heard Ms. Stone's company pays the best. How could you just 500 grand?" My gut clenched, and I sat up straight. Right, that was it. Last time, it was that $500,000 that drove me back to beg Victoria. I'd signed my life away, slave for 10 years, and worked myself to an early grave. Sarah was full-on crying now. "Ethan, you have to go apologize to Ms. Stone. Beg her to give you another chance. Mom can't wait." "Stop crying," I said, rubbing my temples, my voice softening without realizing it. "I'll figure out the money." "How? You don't even have a job." I said I'd figure it out. That's it. I hung up, my mind racing. $500,000. 10 years ago, that was an astronomical sum for a jobless broke guy like me. But for someone who'd seen the future, I booted up my laptop, a cold smirk playing on my lips as I stared at the stock market charts. Every trend, every skyrocketing stock that would explode in the next 10 years was etched clearly in my mind. 500 grand? 5 million? 50 million? It was just a matter of time. Right now, though, I needed seed money. Where to get it? I patted down my pockets, finding only 2 crumpled $100 bills and some loose change. Knock, knock, knock. The banging on the door was rude and urgent. I frowned, opening it to find my landlord's greasy face practically in mine. "Miller, rent's due. Pay up today, or pack your bags and get out." I looked at him calmly. "Give me 2 days." 2 days? My ass. "If you don't have the money, get out." The landlord spat, spittle flying. Just then, a cool, almost metallic female voice cut through from behind the landlord. "His rent is covered." My heart lurched as I looked past him. Victoria Stone. She was clad in a perfectly tailored black power suit, her long hair pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. Her stunning face was devoid of emotion, her eyes as cold as a Siberian winter. How had she found me here? The landlord, seeing the hulking bodyguards behind Victoria, instantly deflated. His greasy face contorted into a fawning smile. "And you would be?" Kevin, Victoria's assistant, a man with thin-rimmed glasses, stepped forward and handed over a thick wad of cash. "Enough." The landlord's eyes widened. He bowed repeatedly. "More than enough." "Absolutely." With that, he scrambled away like a scared rat. I leaned against the doorframe, a sarcastic smile playing on my lips. "Well, Ms. Stone, to what do I owe the pleasure of your visit to my humble abode? If you're here to fire me a second time, you don't have to bother." Victoria's gaze swept around my cramped 10 by 10 apartment, her brow furrowing almost imperceptibly. "Come with me." Her voice was soft, but it carried an undeniable command. "Sorry, my legs aren't really cooperating," I drawled. Kevin's face tightened. "Ethan Miller, watch your tone. It's an honor that Ms. Stone came to see you personally." I chuckled. "Want that honor for yourself, then?" Kevin spluttered, his face flushing crimson. Victoria finally spoke again, a hint of impatience in her voice. 500,000. My eyebrows rose. "I'll give you 500,000. Just come with me." She said it slowly, deliberately, as if bestowing a great gift. Last time, I'd been her dog for 10 years for that $500,000. This time, "Ms. Stone," I said, giving her my most innocent smile. "Do I look like someone who's short on 500,000? Kevin scoffed like I'd told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. You're not short? Ethan, you couldn't even pay your rent. Victoria's eyes narrowed, seeing through my bluff. She probably thought I was playing hard to get. $1 million. She upped the ante. I shook my head. Come back, and I'll reinstate your position. $3 million a year. She seemed to have reached her limit. This was the best offer she could make. To anyone else, it would be a golden ticket to the top. But I just yawned. Ms. Stone, I don't think you understand. I, Ethan Miller, am officially retired effective today. The entire hallway went dead silent. Kevin's eyes were practically bugging out. Even Victoria's usually impassive, Ice Queen face showed a flicker of a crack. She stared at me, trying to find a hint of a lie, but she found nothing. My face clearly communicated one thing. Chill. Ethan Miller, what exactly do you want? Victoria's voice was laced with suppressed fury. Nothing, I said, shrugging. Ms. Stone, let's just go our separate ways. You stick to your path, I'll stick to mine. No need to see each other again. I started to close the door. Wait, Kevin panicked, shoving his hand against the door. Ethan, don't be so ungrateful. The Helix Group project is in major trouble, and only you can fix it. You. Oh, I paused, looking at him with mild interest. The Helix project? Is it the one where their servers got hacked, all client data locked, and the attackers are demanding $30 million? Kevin's mouth dropped open into a perfect O. He stared at me in horror. You? How did you know? This was top secret company information. Only a few core executives even knew about it. Of course I knew. Last time, it was me who spent 3 sleepless nights patching that damn vulnerability and recovering the data. Then I got seriously sick, and Victoria just had her assistant send a get-well basket, never even showed her face. Even Victoria's icy eyes held a storm of shock. She looked at me, scrutinizing me as if seeing me for the first time. How do you know? She asked, a tremor in her voice she didn't seem to notice. I know more than that, I said, wagging a finger. I also know that it wasn't some top-tier hacker who attacked you, but someone inside the Helix Group. Their head of tech, Mark Johnson, right? You. Kevin was speechless. Victoria's body swayed, almost imperceptibly. Mark Johnson was her trusted confidant, had been with her for 5 years. She'd never once doubted him. Evidence, she forced out, trying to stay composed. Evidence. I chuckled. Ms. Stone, I'm just a jobless bum you fired. Where'd I get evidence? I'm just guessing, don't take it seriously. The more I denied it, the more Victoria's heart sank. Every word I spoke was like a hammer blow to her. She knew I wasn't just guessing. What do you want? She finally dropped her imperious facade, her tone even carrying a hint of a plea. I told you I don't want anything. I reached for the door again. $5 million. Victoria practically yelled. Just fix this, and I'll give you $5 million. I stopped, not because of the money, but because I saw a flicker of panic and helplessness in her eyes. So, even Ice Queens could feel fear. I suddenly found it a little amusing. Ms. Stone, you should have just said so earlier, I drawled, holding out my hand. Cash first, then I work. And I'm not coming to your office. I'll stay right here in my dump. I'll talk. Your people will do the work. Deal or no deal. This wasn't negotiating. It was outright humiliation. Everyone expected Victoria to explode on the spot. But she just stared at me for a full 10 seconds, then ground out a single word through clenched teeth. Fine. Kevin was stunned. Ms. Stone, you can't. This is absolutely shut up. Victoria cut him off coldly. Do as he says. Kevin's face burned with indignity, but he pulled out his phone, his hands trembling as he prepared to transfer the money. Wait, I called out. No bank account. Cash only. Of course, I had an account, but I didn't want any transfer records linked to her company. Kevin's face went pale. $5 million in cash. Where is he supposed to get that? Victoria, once again demonstrating her decisive nature, made a quick call. Less than half an hour later, 2 bodyguards appeared at my door, carrying 2 massive black suitcases. The cases opened to reveal stacks of crisp $100 bills, neatly bundled. My tiny apartment was instantly bathed in a golden glow. Can we start now? Victoria's voice was still icy, but if you listened closely, you could detect a hint of urgency. No rush, I said, slowly dragging the suitcases inside. Then, right in front of them, I pulled out a money counter and began feeding the bills through one by one. Kevin's jaw twitched uncontrollably, his fists clenching audibly. Victoria's face grew darker and darker, and the bodyguard behind her even shifted their hands to their waists. The atmosphere in the room was incredibly tense. I, however, acted completely oblivious, tossing each verified stack casually onto my bed. It took me a full 30 minutes to count all the money. All right, genuine article, I said, clapping my hands and nodding in satisfaction. Ethan, Kevin finally snapped. Don't push your luck. Pushing my luck. I glanced at him. Compared to your company, what's this? All right, hand over the laptop. Kevin reluctantly handed me a brand new laptop. I sat on the edge of my bed, legs crossed, not even touching the computer. Enable remote access, I instructed Kevin. Connect to your company's server. Right? Enter the IP address. The password is... I rattled off a string of incredibly complex characters. Kevin's hand shook, almost dropping the laptop. He just changed that password yesterday. Not even Victoria knew it. He stared at me like I was a ghost. Ignoring him, I continued to direct. Okay, now go into the backend logs. Find Mark Johnson's login records. 3 days ago, 2:15 a.m. See it? There's an IP address disguised as system maintenance. Origin is a gaming cafe on the west side. Kevin's fingers trembled on the keyboard. When he actually pulled up the record, all the color drained from his face. Go to that gaming cafe and pull the security footage. Also, check Mark Johnson's personal accounts. There should be a $30 million overseas transfer recently. I said it casually, as if remarking on the weather. Victoria's body swayed again, and she gripped the doorframe to steady herself. The truth exposed in a few simple words. No thrilling corporate espionage. No sleepless nights of tech warfare. It was that simple, because I knew the answer. The rest is up to you, Ms. Stone, I yawned. Consider the $5 million my hush money. The door's that way. No need to see you out. I dismissed them. Victoria gave me a deep, complicated look, shock, anger, bewilderment, and even a hint of fear. Without a word, she turned and walked away. The click-clack of her heels echoed rapidly and erratically in the hallway, as if she were fleeing. The moment Victoria and her crew were gone, I locked the door. Looking at the 2 suitcases of cash on my bed, I let out a long sigh of relief. Mom's surgery was covered. The rest of this money was enough for me to find a small town, buy a little house, and comfortably chill out for good. As for Victoria Stone and her company, I couldn't care less. Ethan Miller was done with that woman for life. I called Sarah, told her the money was secured and she could arrange Mom's hospital admission for tomorrow. Sarah cried tears of joy on the phone, asking where the money came from. I brushed it off, saying some old stock investments had paid off. After reassuring her, I quickly packed a few things. I couldn't stay here. Victoria Stone had eyes and ears everywhere. If she wanted to find me, she'd dig to hell and back. I had to disappear, and fast. I slung my backpack on, grabbing the 2 heavy suitcases, and headed downstairs. Just as I reached the alley entrance, several black sedans screeched to a halt in front of me. Doors opened, and a group of burly men in black suits emerged. Leading them was a man with a scarred face. Mr. Miller, our boss would like to invite you for a little chat, Scarface said, his smile not reaching his eyes. My heart sank. Victoria's people? No, I'd seen her bodyguards. None of them looked like this. Who's your boss? I asked, backing away cautiously. You'll find out when you get there. Scarface waved his hand, and several men moved to encircle me. I swore under my breath, grabbed the 2 suitcases, and turned to run. Seriously? I was a corporate drone who used to work myself to the bone. I was no match for a squad of professional enforcers. But I'd barely taken 2 steps when the other end of the alley was blocked by more cars. A young guy in a loud Hawaiian shirt, with bleached blonde hair and a cigarette dangling from his lips, stepped out of one of them. He spotted me, his eyes lighting up, then dropping to the suitcases in my hands, a greedy grin spreading across his face. All right, pretty boy, hand over the goods, then get on your knees and beg. I might let you off easy today, Blondie sneered. I knew him. Chad Peterson, son of a West Side mogul, Victoria's sworn rival. Helix Group was his family's business. In my previous life, he was the one who pulled every dirty trick in the book to undermine Victoria. Mark Johnson had been on his payroll. Looks like Mark's situation had blown up, and Chad was making desperate moves, coming straight for me. What if I say no? I asked, putting the suitcases behind me, my voice flat. No. Chad burst out laughing like I told the funniest joke. Ha ha ha. Nobody says no to me around here. Get him. Break his legs and grab those bags. The burly men advanced, grins on their faces. A chill went through me. I was screwed. One day in my new life, and before I could even start relaxing, I was going to get my legs broken. Just then, blinding high beams cut into the alley from the entrance, followed by a screech of tires. A red Ferrari roared in, executing a perfect drift to block the alleyway. The door swung open, and a long, shapely leg emerged, clad in a 10-centimeter silver stiletto. Victoria Stone, silhouetted against the lights. She looked like a battle goddess descended from above. Chad Peterson. Her voice was colder than a winter night wind. You dare lay a hand on my people? Chad froze when he saw Victoria, his swagger instantly replaced by a sick excitement. Well, if it isn't Ms. Stone, what's this, your new toy boy? He shamelessly appraised Victoria, his eyes filled with leering aggression. Victoria's face was stormy. Let him go, she said simply. Let him go. Chad laughed. Victoria Stone, who do you think you are? I'm taking this punk today, and not just him. I'm taking you too. The punks behind him burst into laughter. I frowned. Chad was even dumber than he was in my last life. What kind of person was Victoria Stone? She'd built a struggling startup into a billion-dollar empire in just a few years, and it wasn't just business acumen. Sure enough, Victoria didn't even bat an eye. She just said coolly to the air 3 minutes. The words barely left her lips when a dozen more black-suited bodyguards swarmed out from the Ferrari and the surrounding shadows. These weren't the regular security guards I'd seen at her office building. Every single one of them exuded a raw, dangerous aura, their eyes like wolves, clearly men who had seen blood. Chad's ragtag crew looked like sheep before them. What do you want? Chad finally looked scared, shouting with forced bravado. My dad's Mr. Peterson. Try laying a hand on me. Victoria's bodyguards ignored him and charged. What followed was a brutally one-sided beatdown. Screams and the sickening crunch of bones filled the air. In less than 3 minutes, Chad and his men were all on the ground, whimpering like puppies. Scarface and Blondie, Chad, got extra special attention. Their faces were swollen and bruised, several teeth knocked out. The only sounds in the alley, besides my breathing, were the crisp clack-clack-clack of Victoria's heels on the pavement. She walked toward me, step by step. Moonlight illuminated her flawless profile, making her look like an emotionless goddess. Now, are you coming with me? She asked, looking down at me, her voice filled with unyielding authority. I looked at her, then at Chad, still groaning on the ground. I knew it. I wasn't getting away today. Victoria Stone was like a massive net. Once tangled, there was no easy escape. I sighed, nodding in resignation. I'll go, I said, pointing to the 2 suitcases on the ground. But my money comes with me. Victoria's lips twitched almost imperceptibly. At a time like this, the man was still worried about his cash. She said nothing, just gestured to her bodyguards. 2 of them immediately stepped forward, respectfully picking up my suitcases. I followed Victoria and got into the sleek red Ferrari. The car sped off, leaving a trail of dust and chaos behind us. Sitting in the passenger seat, inhaling the faint, cool scent of her perfume, my emotions were a mixed bag. Damn it. My chill-out plan was officially bankrupt on day 1. The Ferrari sped on, finally stopping in Sterling City's most exclusive upscale district, in front of a sprawling villa overlooking the entire city skyline. Get out, Victoria said, unbuckling her seatbelt and stepping out first. I followed, looking at the palatial mansion before me with a grimace. Evil capitalists. Ms. Stone, why did you bring me here? Just so you know, I'm not offering any companion services, I drawled. Victoria, who had been walking ahead, stopped dead. She spun around, her eyes blazing with fury. Ethan Miller, drop this smart-ass act. Say one more inappropriate thing, and I'll personally rip your tongue out. It was the first time I'd seen her lose her composure like that. For 10 years in my previous life, she'd always been that cold, unfeeling machine. I shrugged, saying nothing more. Inside the villa, the opulent decor made my head spin. An elderly man in a butler's uniform greeted us, respectfully taking Victoria's coat. "Welcome home, Miss Victoria." "Alfred, arrange a guest room for him," Victoria said, gesturing to me. "Hold on." I stopped her. "Ms. Stone, what exactly do you want? Let's be clear. I like to lay my cards on the table." Victoria settled onto a massive leather sofa, her long legs crossed elegantly. She didn't look at me, but out at the glittering city skyline, her voice cool. "From today, you'll be staying here." "Why?" I frowned. "Because you've made an enemy of Chad Peterson today, and he won't let you off the hook. You'll only be safe by my side." She turned, her gaze burning into mine. "Ms. Stone," I smiled. "Are you protecting me?" "You could say that. And what's my fee for that?" I held out my hand. "My protection comes with a price. I'm very expensive." Alfred, the butler, twitched at the corner of his mouth. He'd probably never heard anyone speak to Victoria Stone like that in his life. Victoria seemed to almost laugh, a humorless sound. "You want more payment?" "Of course," I said, utterly unapologetic. "You drag me back from my path of easy living, interrupting my enjoyment of life. Shouldn't I get some compensation for my emotional distress?" Victoria took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling dramatically. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, her gaze was as placid as an ancient well. "Fine, how much do you want?" "Not much," I said, holding up one finger. $1,000,000 a day." Alfred gasped audibly. Victoria's pupils contracted sharply. "Ethan Miller, don't push your luck too far." "Too expensive?" I chuckled. "Well, in that case, I'll just find somewhere else to stay. Getting my legs broken by Chad wouldn't be the worst thing. Just another Tuesday, really." I started to turn to retrieve my money cases. "Stop." Victoria's voice cut through the air from behind me, edged with a distinct grind of teeth. "I'll give it to you." I settled into the largest guest room in the villa, feeling utterly satisfied. It boasted a huge terrace overlooking the city skyline, and an outdoor pool gleamed below. I shoved the 2 suitcases of cash under the bed, and then enjoyed a long, luxurious hot bath. When I emerged, Alfred had already had new clothes delivered, along with a lavish late-night meal. Prime steak, fresh lobster, and a vintage Bordeaux. I dug in without hesitation. Gotta admit, this evil capitalist life, for all its corruption, was incredibly comfortable. Full and content, I sprawled on the plush bed, feeling like I'd reached peak existence. My chill-out plan might be temporarily on hold, but chilling out in a new location seemed pretty good too. $1 million a day, all-inclusive, and personal security. Not a bad deal at all. The next day, I woke up naturally. I pulled back the curtains, and sunshine spilled onto my face, warm and inviting. I stretched, then stepped onto the terrace. Below, Victoria was jogging in the garden, clad in athletic wear. Her hair was in a high ponytail, her face free of makeup, giving her a youthful energy that softened her usual sharp, distant demeanor. Sweat glistened at her temples, and the tight workout clothes accentuated her perfect figure. Gotta admit, the woman was a knockout. A deadly knockout, unfortunately. As I admired the view, Victoria spotted me. She stopped looking up. In the sunlight, her eyes were astonishingly bright. "Awake, MHM. Come down for breakfast." Her tone was still command-like, but for some reason, it didn't grate on me as much. I changed and went downstairs. A lavish breakfast spread awaited us, both American and continental options. Victoria was already in a sharp business suit, sitting at the head of the table, sipping coffee and scrolling through financial news on her tablet. I pulled out the chair opposite her and took a bite of a sandwich. "Any plans for today?" she asked, without looking up. "Sleep, sunbathe, swim," I said succinctly. Victoria's hand paused on her tablet. She looked up, frowning at me. "I meant work-related plans." "I'm not your employee," I reminded her. "You are now my personal consultant." She seemed to weigh her words carefully. "Oh," I nodded. "Well, my consultant work involves advising you to let me rest properly and not disturb me." "Ethan Miller." Victoria's voice rose slightly. "Ms. Stone," I said, putting down my sandwich and wiping my mouth, looking at her seriously. "Our agreement yesterday was that you'd ensure my safety and I'd stay here. It said nothing about working for you. Victoria was speechless. She realized she had absolutely no leverage over this immovable man. Fine. She took a deep breath. Then you're coming with me today. Where? To the office. In the end, Victoria practically dragged me to her company. Her reason: while the villa was safe, she didn't trust me to be alone. Sitting in the passenger seat of her Ferrari, watching the city blur past, I felt like a trophy boyfriend. At the office, Victoria led me directly to her penthouse office. It was ridiculously huge, almost half a floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Sterling City's entire CBD. Just stay here and don't wander off, Victoria said, then sat at her desk and plunged into a mountain of paperwork. I found a most comfortable sofa, sprawled out, and started scrolling through TikTok. Kevin, the assistant, walked in with coffee and was greeted by this sight: their elegant, workaholic Ms. Stone slaving away, while the man who dared to defy her yesterday was practically comatose on the sofa, messing with his phone. Kevin's worldview was severely shaken. He set down the coffee, approached Victoria, and whispered, "Ms. Stone, you're just going to let him stay like that? What else?" Victoria didn't look up. "But he's so—" Kevin struggled for the right word. "Let him be." Victoria's voice betrayed no emotion. Kevin retreated, looking constipated. The only sounds in the office were my TikTok videos and the rustle of Victoria's papers. The atmosphere was, for a moment, strangely harmonious. A little while later, Victoria's desk phone rang. She answered, listened for a few moments, and her brows knitted tightly. "What did you say?" The partner backed out at the last minute. "What?" "All right, I understand." She hung up, her face grim. "Ich glänzte her." No need to ask. Chad Peterson was definitely behind this. While Helix Group might not be as big as Victoria's company, it was deeply entrenched in Sterling City and had some sway. After getting his ass handed to him yesterday, Chad wouldn't be Chad if he didn't retaliate. "Need a hand?" I asked, feigning ignorance. Victoria looked up at me, her expression complicated. She was torn. On one hand, she'd seen my capabilities and knew I might have a solution. But on the other, her pride wouldn't let her ask me for help. Especially not from a man who'd been nonchalantly playing on his phone on the sofa moments ago. "No," she said coldly, picking up her phone and starting to call her contacts, one by one. I shrugged and went back to my videos. "Good. Please don't ask. If you ask, I charge." Victoria spent the entire morning on the phone. She tapped into almost every contact she had, but the results were disappointing. The partner Chad had poached was a crucial link in their next quarter's most important project. If they couldn't resolve this, the company's losses would be in the hundreds of millions. The pressure in the office kept building. Kevin crept in and out, constantly on edge, afraid of saying the wrong thing. At lunchtime, Alfred personally delivered our meals. Still a spread of gourmet delights, exquisite as works of art. I ate with gusto, but Victoria didn't touch her food. She just sat there, staring out the window, lost in thought. "Ms. Stone not hungry?" I asked, wiping my mouth after finishing the last lobster tail. She ignored me. "Actually, this problem isn't impossible to solve," I said slowly. Victoria's body stiffened. She whipped her head around to look at me. "What solution?" Her voice was hoarse. "Oh, there's definitely a way," I smiled, holding up 5 fingers. "Same terms. 5 million. No, I shook my head. This time it's 50 million. "You're insane." Victoria shot up from her seat, her chest heaving. "Ethan Miller, don't push your luck too far." "Pushing my luck?" I spread my hands. "Ms. Stone, you have to understand, if I help you with this, I'll be making a deadly enemy of Chad Peterson. Taking a personal risk for a fee isn't unreasonable, is it? Besides, compared to your company's hundreds of millions in losses, 50 million is a drop in the bucket." Victoria glared at me, her teeth practically grinding. She wanted to strangle me, this opportunistic jerk, right now. But she couldn't. She had no other choice. "Fine," she bit out through clenched teeth. "I'll give it to you, but you better guarantee your method works." "Don't worry, fair and square." I snapped my fingers. "Let me see your project proposal." Kevin immediately handed over the tablet. I skimmed through it. The project was the development of a new smart home system, and the chip supplier Chad had poached was called Corling Tech. "This chip supplier, it's called Corling Tech, right?" I asked. Yes. And their CEO is David Chun? That's right. Then it's simple. I tossed the tablet back to Kevin. Now, help me arrange a dinner meeting with David Chun. Tell him I'm inviting him out. Kevin looked at Victoria, stunned. Victoria Froneth, what good will you do by meeting him? Our people have tried countless times, and he won't even see us. Your people are your people. I'm me, I said with a mysterious smile. Don't worry, he'll show. The location I chose wasn't a five-star hotel, but an unassuming little grill joint on the south side. Victoria's frown deepened as she looked at the address. But in the end, she said nothing, tacitly agreeing to my plan, because she realized that sometime along the way, this man she'd once been able to manipulate so easily had completely slipped out of her control. In fact, he was now controlling her. That evening on the south side, at Old Man Johnson's Grill, when Victoria and I arrived, the place was packed, buzzing with lively chatter and the smell of sizzling food. Victoria, in her expensive custom suit, looked completely out of place, drawing curious glances. She clearly wasn't comfortable, her brow furrowed. Are you sure he'll come to a place like this? She asked in a low voice, full of doubt. Just wait, I said, finding an empty table and confidently ordering some barbecue skewers and beer. Victoria sat stiffly, like a swan lost in a dive bar. I ignored her and started eating. Hey, another 10 extra spicy wings, boss. I called out. Victoria's face darkened. About half an hour later, a slightly overweight, middle-aged man in a jacket hesitantly approached our table. He saw Victoria and paused. Then his gaze shifted to me. Mr. Miller, he asked tentatively. I looked up, still chewing. Mr. Chun? Have a seat. It was David Chun, CEO of Corling Tech. David sat down awkwardly, his eyes constantly darting towards Victoria. Mr. Miller, you wanted to see me about something. Mr. Chun, don't be shy, have some food first. I pushed a plate of grilled meat toward him. David didn't touch it, just gave an embarrassed laugh. Victoria remained silent, her face cold. Mr. Chun, I hear your daughter got into Sterling University's computer science program this year. I asked casually, taking a sip of beer. David's expression suddenly changed. How did you know that? I also know she's very keen on getting into the Pinnacle Tech Initiative lab, but spots are limited and competition is fierce, right? The Pinnacle Tech Initiative was the top program in Sterling University's computer science department, led by a legendary professor. Students who got in had unlimited potential. Cold sweat beaded on David's forehead. He looked at me, his eyes filled with suspicion and alarm. Who exactly are you? Who I am isn't important, I smiled, offering him a skewer of spicy wings. What's important is that I can get your daughter that spot. David's breathing hitched. Are you serious? Of course. I gestured to Victoria, who still hadn't spoken. This is Ms. Victoria Stone, an honorary board member of Sterling University. She donates 8 figures annually to the university. A word from her carries more weight than anything. Victoria was stunned. She hadn't expected me to drag her here for this. David also looked at Victoria in shock. He clearly hadn't realized this ice queen had such clout. He gulped loudly. Mr. Chun, I said, patting his shoulder and lowering my voice. Whatever Chad Peterson offered you, Ms. Stone can double it. Plus, there's her daughter's future. You weigh the pros and cons yourself. With that, I stopped looking at him and returned to my skewers. David sat there, his face shifting between shades, clearly in an internal battle. Victoria looked at me, an emotion beyond mere shock appearing in her eyes for the first time. It was a strange, indescribable glint she couldn't quite pinpoint. David struggled for a long time, then finally gritted his teeth. Mr. Miller, Ms. Stone, this whole thing, it was my mistake. That little jerk Chad, he was threatening me with evidence of my company's tax evasion. I had no choice. He blubbered, snot and tears flowing. Victoria's brow furrowed, clearly uncomfortable with the display. I waved a hand, cutting him off. All right, stop crying. Chad has evidence of tax evasion. But do you think Ms. Stone doesn't? David's sobbing stopped instantly, and he looked at me in horror. I smiled. Mr. Chun, we're all business people here. Ms. Stone wants a win-win partnership. As for Chad Peterson, you don't need to worry, Ms. Stone will take care of him. I looked at Victoria, giving her a pointed glance. Victoria, though displeased, understood what I meant. She spoke coldly. Mr. Chun, as long as you fulfill your contract with us, I will handle the Helix Group, and I will personally speak to the dean about your daughter. David's face lit up with joy. He sprang to his feet, bowing repeatedly to both of us. Thank you, Ms. Stone. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Don't worry, I'll have someone send the contract over tomorrow. There won't be any more slip-ups. Just like that, the problem was solved. While Victoria's extensive network of contacts had been useless, I'd wrapped it up over a casual dinner. On the drive back to the villa, Victoria drove in silence. The atmosphere in the car was subtly tense. How did you know all that about David Chun? She finally couldn't hold it in any longer and asked. You want to know? Yes. Then beg me. I said lazily. You. Victoria slammed on the brakes, the Ferrari screeching on the empty road. She spun around, her beautiful eyes blazing. Ethan Miller, do you ever talk to me like that? What else? I looked at her. Ms. Stone, you asked me for a favor. I didn't make you get on your knees. I'm already being respectful. You. She was too furious to speak, her chest heaving. We just stared at each other. After a long moment, she seemed to deflate and restarted the car. How did you know? Her voice had softened, carrying a hint of barely suppressed curiosity and confusion. I looked out the window and said blandly, because that legendary professor was my university advisor. Victoria froze again. She snapped her head to look at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. That godlike figure in the field of computer science was this man's advisor? How was that possible? She immediately instructed Kevin to pull up my records. 5 minutes later, Kevin sent a document to her phone. Victoria stared at my university and advisor's name on the file, sinking into a long silence. She realized that she had never truly understood the man who had worked under her for 10 years. He was shrouded in layer after layer of mystery, and she, surprisingly, felt a strong urge to personally unravel those mysteries. Back at the villa, Victoria's gaze toward me had completely changed. It was no longer just scrutiny and calculation, but rather a mix of inquiry and apprehension. Your university advisor, was it really him? She still sounded a little disbelieving. The one and only, I said, lounging on the sofa, sipping the freshly squeezed juice Alfred had made for me. Then why? She trailed off. Why would I willingly be a nobody employee under her for 10 years? With my background and capabilities, I should have been a star wherever I went. Because I liked it, I answered as if it were the most obvious thing. Work is exhausting. I just like to kick back and take it easy. Victoria said nothing. She felt her worldview had been repeatedly shattered tonight. Was there really someone who held a royal flush but only wanted to play a 3? All right, Ms. Stone, problem solved. When does my 50 million hit my account? I held out my hand. Victoria's lips twitched, and she ground out a few words. Tomorrow morning. Perfect, I nodded, satisfied. Well, I'm heading to bed. Remember to wake me up for my money tomorrow. With that, I lazily made my way upstairs. Victoria was left alone in the vast living room, watching my retreating figure, silent for a long time. The next morning, while I was still dreaming of counting money, I was jolted awake by urgent knocking. Ethan, wake up. Something's happened. It was Victoria's voice, laced with an unprecedented level of urgency and a hint of panic. I frowned, opening the door to find Victoria in her pajamas, her hair disheveled, her face frantic. What's wrong? The sky falling. Chad leaked our project proposal to our biggest competitor, Vortex Tech. Oh, I replied, turning to go back to sleep. Oh, that's all you have to say, oh? Victoria grabbed my arm, exasperated. Ethan, this is different. We can replace a chip supplier, but the entire project proposal has been leaked. Vortex Tech already held an overnight press conference and launched an identical product concept. Hundreds of our R&D staff, a year's worth of effort, all wasted. This was a big problem, indeed. It had happened in my previous life, too. Back then, Victoria's company had suffered a devastating blow. Stock prices plummeted, almost crippled beyond recovery. It was I who, with the tech team, spent another 6 months developing a whole new system to pull the company back from the brink. And in those 6 months, I barely slept. Remembering those dark days made my skin crawl. So, I looked at her. You want me to fix it again? Yes. Victoria didn't hesitate. Whatever it takes, I'll agree to anything if you can fix it. Anything you say? I raised an eyebrow, my gaze sweeping over her perfectly sculpted figure. Victoria's face flushed scarlet, but she gritted her teeth and nodded. Fine. I smiled. All right, I said slowly. This time I don't want money. Victoria froze. No money? This man, obsessed with money, actually didn't want it? Then what do you want? She asked, looking at me warily. I leaned in close, whispering just loud enough for only us to hear. Victoria's eyes instantly widened like saucers. I said, I want you to kiss me. The air solidified. Victoria's face, from her earlobes to her neck, turned the color of a boiled lobster. She stared at me, her beautiful eyes filled with both mortification and disbelief. Ethan Miller, you bastard. She raised her hand, intending to slap me. I didn't flinch, just watched her calmly. Her hand stopped in midair, her wrist trembling slightly. What, Ms. Stone? I smirked. Didn't you just say you'd agree to anything? She stammered. One kiss in exchange for hundreds of millions in company losses and a year's worth of effort from hundreds of employees. That's a pretty good deal, wouldn't you say? I cajoled. Victoria's chest heaved violently, clearly engaged in an intense internal struggle. Victoria Stone, the queen of Sterling City's business world, who hadn't even held a boy's hand growing up. Now, she was supposed to kiss a man she'd hated just a short while ago. It felt worse than death. But the company. She closed her eyes, her long lashes fluttering like butterfly wings. After a long moment, as if coming to a monumental decision, she suddenly opened her eyes. Fine, I agree, she bit out. But you must guarantee you can solve the problem. Absolutely. I watched her calmly, even leaning my face closer. Victoria took a deep breath, like she was walking to the gallows. She closed her eyes and quickly pecked my cheek. A fleeting touch, like a dragonfly kissing the water. But that soft, warm contact still made my heart skip a beat. There! She stepped back, her face so red it looked like it would drip blood, unable to look at me. Now, tell me your solution. I touched the spot where she kissed me and smiled. The solution is simple. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. The phone rang for a long time before it was picked up. A deep, lazy voice answered. Hello, who is this? Waking me up so early. Professor, it's me, Ethan Miller. There was a brief silence on the other end, followed by a surprised laugh. You rascal. You actually remembered to call me. I thought you died in some forgotten corner of the world. Still alive and kicking, Professor. I chuckled. I need a small favor. Spill it. Vortex Tech, you know them? They launched a smart home system yesterday. I'd like your esteemed opinion on it, publicly. Vortex Tech. The old man on the other end pondered for a moment. Oh, right, the company run by that Mike Davies, who loves to brag everywhere. All right, I understand. I'll be in touch. He hung up. Victoria looked at me, completely bewildered. That's it. That's it. What exactly did you ask your professor to do? You'll find out soon enough. I smiled mysteriously, then turned and went back to my room, collapsing onto the bed. Hey, Ethan, explain yourself. Victoria yelled frantically from outside the door. I ignored her. Catching up on sleep was more important than anything else. I slept straight through until noon. When I finally emerged from my room, feeling refreshed, I found Victoria and Alfred sitting in the living room, each holding a tablet, their expressions grave. What's up? I asked. Victoria looked up at me, her eyes a tangle of complex emotions. She handed me her tablet. I took it and saw a barrage of news articles, each with a more sensational headline than the last. Legendary professor denounces Vortex Tech's new product as industrial waste. Shocking. Vortex Tech's so-called core technology is a 10-year-old obsolete solution. Stock market meltdown. Vortex Tech loses billions in market value overnight. The star of these news stories was none other than my old advisor, Dr. Evans, a towering authority in the field of computer science. This morning, Dr. Evans had made a rare media appearance, unreservedly tearing apart Vortex Tech's new product, from its core architecture to its application logic. He revealed that the system's underlying code was a failed prototype he developed with his students a decade ago, riddled with vulnerabilities and utterly lacking commercial value. The moment he spoke, the entire tech world exploded. Dr. Evans's word was law. If he called you trash, you were trash, no arguments. Vortex Tech's stock plummeted, an almost vertical nosedive. The CEO, Mike Davies, hastily called a press conference to defend himself, only to be ambushed by reporters and left speechless. Because at the end of his interview, Dr. Evans had also provided a detailed, multi-page technical analysis report, meticulously dissecting every flaw and weakness in the system. The evidence was undeniable. Vortex Tech was finished, and the project proposal they'd proudly stolen from Victoria was now nothing more than a worthless piece of paper, a colossal joke. This is... Victoria looked at me, her voice trembling. I told you, my professor doesn't like people flaunting his failed prototypes, I said with a shrug, sounding completely nonchalant. In my past life, Vortex Tech had also ridden the stolen proposal for a while. It wasn't until 6 months later, when I developed a new system, that I finally brought them down. This time, I just made a phone call. Victoria stared at me, silent for a long time. If her previous feelings towards me were curiosity and wariness, now it was pure, unadulterated. How many more cards did this man have hidden up his sleeve? Just how powerful was he? Mr. Miller, Alfred cautiously interjected from the side. How did you know that Vortex Tech system was Dr. Evans's failed prototype? I smiled, because I wrote that failed prototype myself back then. Alfred. Victoria. The entire villa fell into a dead silence once more. Vortex Tech's downfall was even swifter than expected. The day after Dr. Evans's statement, the company was hit with scandals of massive layoffs and a broken capital chain. The CEO, Mike Davies, was reportedly taken in for questioning by authorities on suspicion of commercial fraud and stock manipulation. And the original instigator, Chad Peterson, was completely dumbfounded. He thought his pulling the rug out move would cripple Victoria, but before he could even celebrate for 2 days, his hired help had vanished in smoke. What terrified him even more was Victoria's counterattack. Victoria combined the evidence provided by David Chun with some materials she already possessed and directly sued Helix Group for unfair business practices. Suddenly, the Peterson family was in chaos. All this I learned while lounging by the villa's pool, sunbathing, as Kevin reported to me. Ethan, you're a genius. Everyone in the company worships you like a god now. Kevin's eyes were full of adoration. I'd already tacitly allowed him to call me Ethan. Just average third best in the world, I said lazily, sipping my iced juice. And Ethan, Kevin leaned in conspiratorially. Ms. Stone seems a little different today. How so? She smiled during a meeting today. I almost choked on my juice. Smiled? Are you sure? I thought her facial nerves were dead. Absolutely positive, Kevin said excitedly. Although just a quick twitch of her lips, we all saw it. The entire conference room went silent. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting. The Eternal Ice Queen actually smiled? Was it because the company crisis was over and she was in a good mood? Or for some other reason? As I pondered this, Victoria's call came through. Where are you? Her voice was still cool, but seemed to lack a certain aloofness. By the pool, contemplating life. There was a brief silence on the other end. There's a cocktail party tonight. You're coming with me. No, I flat out refused. Too many people, too noisy. You have to go. Her tone was non-negotiable. It's a celebration party. Many partners will be there. As the biggest contributor this time, you must attend. I'll attend if there's an appearance fee. Victoria seemed accustomed to my mercenary logic. She said calmly, if you see any women from any company you like there, I'll set you up. This time I really did spray juice. Ms. Stone, are you getting into the matchmaking business? A grinding sound came from Victoria's end of the line. Ethan Miller, are you coming or not? Coming, of course I'm coming, I quickly said. Why wouldn't I, if there are beautiful women to see? I hung up and looked at Kevin, who was trying to suppress a laugh. What are you laughing at? Go get my suit ready. Right away, Ethan. The evening gala was held in the ballroom on the top floor of Sterling City's most luxurious Grand Hyatt Hotel. I changed into the custom Armani suit Kevin had prepared for me, looking sharp in front of the mirror. Gotta say, I cleaned up pretty well. Victoria, in a wine-red evening gown, her hair softly curled, with delicate makeup, became the center of attention the moment she entered. She walked in, her arm linked with mine. In that instant, I felt everyone's gaze on us like spotlights. There was surprise, jealousy, curiosity, especially from the young, eligible bachelors who had once pursued Victoria. Their eyes practically spat fire at me. "Ms. Stone, who is this gentleman?" A smarmy man with slicked back hair approached, holding a drink, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "My date," Victoria said after a slight hesitation, finally settling on the word. "Oh, Ms. Stone's taste is certainly becoming more unique." The man's words held a hidden barb. I just smiled, saying nothing. Such small fry weren't worth my breath. Victoria led me through the crowd, constantly greeted by people wanting to shake her hand or toast her. She handled it all with practiced ease, truly a queen. I, meanwhile, just played the role of a handsome backdrop, occasionally returning a charming smile to the curious glances from socialites. "Tired?" Victoria asked me quietly during a lull. "I'm all right," I said. I was a little tired, not physically but mentally. I'd had enough of this fake corporate schmoozing in my last life. "There's a lounge area over there. You can sit for a bit." She pointed to a corner. I nodded, about to slip away, when a discordant voice rang out. "Victoria Stone." We turned to see Chad Peterson storming toward us, his eyes bloodshot. Behind him was his nouveau riche father, Mr. Peterson. Today, Chad had none of his usual arrogance. His face was a picture of defeat and venom. "Victoria Stone, you ruthless bitch. Do you have to drive us completely to ruin?" he roared. The surrounding guests were startled and looked over. Victoria's face turned cold. "Chad, watch your language." "Watch my ass." Chad was completely unhinged. "If it weren't for you, would our family be like this?" Mr. Peterson grabbed him, forcing a grotesque smile for Victoria. "Ms. Stone, my son is young and foolish. Please don't mind him. We, the Petersons, admit defeat this time. Please show us some mercy, will you?" "Now you're asking for mercy?" Victoria scoffed. "Too late." Chad tried to lunge forward again, but his father held him back tightly. I watched the drama unfold, stifling a yawn. Then I picked up a glass of champagne and walked over to Chad. "Kid," I said, lightly tapping his cheek. He flinched, trembling from my casual disrespect. "Want a chance to turn things around?" I lowered my voice, speaking only loud enough for the three of us to hear. Chad and his father both froze. Victoria frowned, looking at me with confusion. "What do you mean?" Chad asked cautiously. I smiled, leaned into his ear, and whispered a name. Chad's pupils dilated to their absolute limit. His father, Mr. Peterson, turned deathly pale, as if he'd seen a ghost. The name I'd spoken belonged to a very unassuming mid-level manager in Victoria's company. But in my past life, this was the person who, on the eve of Victoria's company going public, embezzled the largest chunk of the company's liquid assets and fled. It caused the company's capital chain to break, the IPO plan to fall through, and Victoria herself was severely weakened, taking a full 2 years to recover. This incident was Victoria's eternal pain, and a top secret within the company, known only to a select few. Chad and his father had clearly heard whispers about it. They looked at me, their eyes filled with terror. What kind of monster was this man? How did he know so many secrets, even ones they'd only vaguely heard about? "I can help you flip him," I said, looking at Chad like a tempting devil. "Just listen to me, and I guarantee that within a month, Victoria Stone will be on her knees begging you." Chad's breathing grew ragged, his eyes flickering with madness and greed. The fire of revenge reignited within him. What do you want?" he stammered. "I don't want anything," I smiled. "I just purely enjoy watching Victoria struggle." I turned to face Victoria, whose face was a mask of ice. She had clearly overheard our conversation. She looked at me, her eyes filled with bitter disappointment and coldness. "Ethan Miller, what exactly are you trying to do?" Her voice trembled. "Nothing," I said, shrugging innocently. "I just thought the game was getting a little boring, so I wanted to change the rules." "Am I just a game to you? What else?" I countered. Victoria's face instantly went white. She looked at me as if I were a complete stranger. Fine. Ethan Miller, I misjudged you." With that, She turned decisively, her heels clicking as she walked out of the ballroom, step by step. Her retreating figure looked forlorn and isolated. Chad and his father watched the scene, then exchanged glances, a look of wild joy spreading across their faces. They thought Victoria and I had completely fallen out. Mr. Miller, Mr. Miller, we'll work together. Let's cooperate. Chad grabbed my arm excitedly. I shook off his hand, adjusting my suit. Cooperate, yes, I said, looking at him, a strange smile playing on my lips. Tomorrow, transfer 51% of your company's shares to my name. Chad and his father. The wild joy on their faces instantly froze. Mr. Miller, what do you mean? Mr. Peterson's smile was uglier than a grimace. What I mean is, I said, taking a sip of champagne, from tomorrow on, I run Helix Group. You two can just be nominal shareholders. You're robbing us. Chad yelled, exasperated. You don't have to give them to me, I shrugged. Then I'll just have to hand over the recording of you threatening Miss Stone to the police. I show them my phone, the recording interface clearly visible on the screen. Chad and his father's faces instantly turned ashen. They realized that from the very beginning, I'd set a trap for them. I wasn't going to cooperate with them. I was going to devour them. You. Chad pointed at me, trembling with rage, unable to utter a single word. No more use. I patted his shoulder. Go prepare the equity transfer agreement. Oh, and don't forget to include the insider's information as well. With that, I ignored the petrified father and son and walked out of the ballroom with a flourish. Stepping out of the hotel, the evening breeze felt a little cool on my face. I watched Victoria's red Ferrari disappear into the night and felt a strange emptiness inside. Had I gone too far? Nah, forget it. I hailed a cab and headed back to the villa. The villa was dark. Victoria wasn't back yet. I turned on the lights, poured myself a glass of water, and sat on the sofa to wait. I don't know how long I waited until I heard the sound of the lock turning at the front door. Victoria was back. She reeked of alcohol, and her steps were unsteady. She'd clearly had a lot to drink. Seeing me in the living room, she froze, then scoffed. What? Here to enjoy the show? You're drunk. I frowned. Whether I'm drunk or not is none of your business. She slammed her purse onto the sofa. Ethan Miller, get out. Get out of my house. Victoria, calm down. I can't calm down. She suddenly lunged at me like an enraged cat, hitting and punching me. You liar. You bastard. I trusted you. Why would you do this to me? Her fists were soft and lacked power. I let her vent, sighing inwardly. Women, so much trouble. When she tired herself out, panting, I finally caught her wrists. Done now. She looked up, her red eyes glistening with tears that streamed down her face. It was the first time I'd ever seen her cry. She wept like a child who had suffered an immense wrong. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by something. Victoria, I said, looking at her, enunciating each word. If I told you everything I did was for you, would you believe me? She froze, looking at me through tear-filled eyes, seemingly not understanding my words. I didn't explain further. Instead, I lowered my head and kissed her lips, which tasted of wine and salty tears. Victoria was utterly stunned. Her eyes widened, and she forgot to struggle, forgot to breathe. This kiss was completely different from the fleeting peck on the cheek earlier. It was dominant, forceful, undeniable. I parted her lips, invading, plundering every sweet inch of her mouth. I don't know how long it lasted, but I finally released her when she was almost breathless. She sagged in my arms, gasping for air, her cheeks flushed, her eyes dazed. You. She tried to speak, but only a single syllable escaped her. Calm now, I asked softly, stroking her hair. She said nothing, just buried her head in my chest, her body still trembling slightly. I held her, sitting on the sofa. Chad Peterson and his father have already transferred 51% of Helix Group's shares to me. I stated calmly. The person in my arms stiffened, and I've also obtained the insider's information. She suddenly looked up, staring at me in disbelief. You weren't going to cooperate with them. When did I ever say I was going to cooperate with them? I chuckled. I just said I could help him turn things around. Now Helix is mine. If I want to turn around, it will. That's not a contradiction, is it? Victoria said nothing. She felt her brain was short-circuiting. How could this man's schemes be so intricate, with so many twists? Then why did you intentionally provoke me? She whispered, a hint of accusation in her voice. Because if I didn't, how could I get that idiot Chad to willingly hand over his company? I playfully flicked her nose. And besides, I also want to see if you actually care about me. Victoria's face instantly flared red again. She buried her head deeper, unwilling to look at me. Who cares about you? She mumbled softly, like a pouting cat. I smiled. So, this is what an ice queen looks like after she melts. Pretty cute, actually. All right now, let's talk business, I said, my smile fading as my expression turned serious. What? Business? My compensation, I said, looking at her intently. This time, I helped you take over Helix, and I exposed the insider, saving you hundreds of millions in losses. That compensation can't be just a simple kiss. Victoria looked at me nervously. Then, what do you want? I looked at her and said, word by word, I want you, Victoria Stone, to be my girlfriend. The entire world seemed to stand still in that moment. Victoria looked up, meeting my deep gaze. Her small, bewildered reflection was mirrored in my eyes. After a long silence, she gently nodded. Okay. I smiled, a wide, genuine smile, like a child who had received all the candy in the world. I lowered my head and kissed her again. Outside the window, a bright moon quietly ascended. My plan to just chill out was completely bankrupt. But it seemed I got an even better ending. Money, leisure, and an Ice Queen CEO for a girlfriend. Yeah, this life seemed a lot more interesting than simply chilling. Life, after all, should have some ambition. Like setting a small goal, making my girlfriend's company mine too,